Okay, great. I think we'll kick off, given we're on the hour. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Pleasure to have you here, and welcome to our session. So in this next 45 minutes, we'll be covering Jira cleanup best practices. Before we do, I'd just like to say it's really great to be at JiraCon this year. We hope you find the next 2 days really valuable, and I'm delighted to be joined by two awesome speakers. So yeah, for the next 45 minutes, we're taking you through Jira cleanup best practices, and I'll introduce my colleagues. So I'm Craig Wilson. I'm in the product marketing team for AppFox, one of the gold Atlassian marketplace vendors. I'm delighted to be joined by two of my colleagues, Jeff and Nick, who bring a significant amount of experience from a number of years administrating Jira for a number of large enterprises around the world. They've added a lot of their experience and learnings to the slides throughout this, and in the top corners, you'll see a top tip box. So we've really tried to kind of tease out the top tips for you throughout, and both Jeff and Nick have contributed to this a lot. So yeah, a pleasure to have you both here. Thank you for joining me, and we'll move on. So today's session is really just all about you. In the next 45 minutes, we will go through a number of slides. As you would know, Jira cleanups are a huge topic, and there's a lot of different moving parts with this. But what we tried to do is pull together the best practices and learnings that both Jeff and Nick and colleagues of ours have had from years of working with Jira. As I said, in the top right corners of the number of slides throughout, you'll see a top tip. So again, take these away. There's other things included throughout the slides. And this is all for your benefit as well and your value. We've also included a number of useful resources and links throughout as well. I believe these sessions will be made available on demand as well. So we'll try and share as much as possible as we go through. But if you do miss something or you don't quite catch a link, don't worry. We'll make sure you get this afterwards. So yeah, as said on the slide, we just have three small asks of you. Number one, please share your challenges with us on this topic. We'd love to kind of provide our knowledge and experience in this area and help you with these specific challenges. Please do ask us questions. So whether that's in the Zoom chat or the Attendee Hub chat, please make use of both channels, and we'll work through answering those for you. And then we have a virtual booth as well. So please come and chat to our team afterwards. The 45 minutes is most likely go quickly. So by all means, come and speak to us afterwards, and I'd love to help where possible. 1 second. So yeah, moving on to the topic at hand. Jira, as we know, is an incredible tool, and it's loved by teams around the world of all different sizes, really, from small to medium teams to even your large multinational enterprises. In many cases, it's often mission critical and a center point to some really awesome projects and getting teamwork done. And as with any mission critical piece of software, you'd expect a significant amount of investment to go into that, whether that's time, money, or even people and man hours. And so the real success of Jira is key. And that's where the cleanup comes into play, because it's important to make sure that Jira is well maintained so you can get the most value out of it, and so it can benefit your teams in the best way. And the quote at the top really defines that in a nutshell. So you want to use Jira to optimize your work and really use the unique selling points of Jira to really help you in your work and not become the work. And in this session today, we'll run through a number of pointers that can help you maintain a well structured and maintained Jira instance. And before we begin, just so we're all on the same page as well, we thought we'd start with what is a Jira cleanup? So simply put, it's the process of identifying the key areas for improvement and making the changes or removing items that are no longer required to improve the overall health and maintainability of Jira. In the top right-hand corner, you'll see the first of many tips that you'll see throughout the presentation. This process should be ongoing, and it should really adapt as the organization and stakeholder needs evolve over time. Where your Jira instance is today won't be the same as where it needs to be in 3 to 5 years' time. And so the Jira cleanup process is an iterative process that should evolve with you. And depending on your situation, it's likely the phrase a Jira cleanup will invoke different thoughts and feelings. So on one hand, it may, hopefully not, but it may fill you with the feeling of dread. It may, on the other hand, bring some excitement, or you look forward to the challenge of getting stuck into a cleanup, or you may be somewhere in the middle. And to be honest, regardless of where you sit within these kind of 3 different areas, we hope that today's session will help you, will help the Jira cleanup process become more of a routine and an enjoyable part of your role, rather than someone that's seen as a burden or an uphill struggle. And with that being said, I'll now pass over to my colleague, Nick.
Thank you very much, Craig. I'll turn my camera on. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Really happy to be talking to you today, and thank you for taking your time to come join us. So, why is a cleanup important? As we all know, no software applications can handle an infinite amount of data, especially with a lack of governance. This will, undoubtedly degrade performance and the actual usability of the tool itself. At the end of the day, infrastructure can scale, but it can only scale to a certain extent, whether it be vertically or horizontally. It will always inevitably need some, scaling of human resources as well. And it has a cascading effect, which eventually is going to be unfeasible. So, what do routine cleanups actually do? Well, actually help maximize your return on investment within Jira. And at the end of the day, that's what you want to maximize. You'll find that, or at least we've seen from experience, instances that grow organically tend to have structure, tend to lack structure or coordination, leading to excessive amounts of config. Especially when this is combined with badly documented or structure, and instances will likely have some outdated and hard to interpret data. And this will lead to some poor reporting. End of the day, your reporting is only as good as the data itself. And as mentioned earlier, we don't want to let Jira become the work for your users, because that will lead to some poor satisfaction ratings. So moving on to the next slide. Let's come up quickly. Here you can see a handful of reasons why you'd like to do a cleanup and why they're important. Cleanups can help prevent Jira from being cluttered, slow, and frustrating for users to work in. What you might find to expect after routine cleanups is some reduced complexity, faster search queries and results, improved consistency, happier users, the ability to actually scale more feasibly, maybe establish change management process. Maybe you don't have this, maybe you do, but it's great to have one of those, especially within Jira. Useful reporting and useful insights that can allow you to make better business decisions at the end of the day, save money in your resources and in the actual infrastructure, improve reliability, and just easy to maintain in general. So now you know why cleanups are important. The question is how and when you should do them. I'll hand over to Jeff.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeff. Happy to be here today, and thanks for joining us. So cleanups are very easy to just say, oh, do them this often. But the thing is, honestly, they're going to be up to what are your needs. But we recommend a minimum schedule being 3 different types of cleanups with interspersed in between necessary small adjustments. And we recommend having a monthly basic cleanup, a quarterly, a slightly more advanced cleanup, but still on a basic level, and then an annual advanced, more, I would say, technically involved cleanup that takes care of more of your business needs, but then also has a larger sort of time cost together with that. So you will have in between these ad hoc tasks, we can basically guarantee that, but you want to make sure that the scheduled ones still occur, even if you've had an ad hoc task in between, to make sure that you stay consistent, you build good habits, and you keep up the sort of standards that you put in place. So if we go to the next slide, back to Nick.
Thanks, Jeff. So here at AC and at Fox, we tend to break a cleanup into 5 stages. And we will go into much more detail for each of these stages. But before we do, I think it's important to know that these aren't independent states. Often they might overlap. So for example, preparation and identification will overlap at times. And also stakeholder engagement is something that you'll hear soon is crucially important and actually could be throughout the process. And if you guys, need any help at all with your cleanup or have any questions at all, here at AC, we offer a free consultation. You see, you've got the link there. I'll also put that just in the chat quickly. So I was going to paste that there. So you should be able to see that in the chat now. And with our free consultation, you get a free half an hour with one of our expert consultants to talk about anything Atlassian related at all. Here at AC, we actually perform what we refer to as Atlassian health checks, which essentially is the same thing as a cleanup, but just a one-off. So the 5 stages, you've got preparation. This is essentially just getting Jira ready to be cleaned. And then move on to identification, where you look at getting your third-party tools or Jira itself with its health checks or your user feedback to spot areas for improvement. You've got your stakeholder engagement. You need the backing of stakeholders to get these changes and new ways of working established. So that's really crucial. Then you come on to the cleanup itself, which will usually encompass any actions or quick wins that you can get onto straight away. And then you've got organization. These tend to be a bit more time-consuming activities. So, for example, it could be standardization or user management. And yeah, so if you're unsure, feel free to reach out anytime. We'll be in the booth after this, or you can go directly to the website. And with that, move on to stage 1, preparation. And move on to the next slide, please, Craig. Thank you. So before you can make any changes, it's key to have a development instance nice and fresh. And so what I mean by that is, if you don't already set up another instance of Jira, you might refer to this as UAT or pre-prod, and take a XML backup of your current Jira instance and do a full site import into there. And this is great for for testing upgrades and just checking improvements or doing any scripting, anything like that. It's great to do that in a UAT environment, obviously prior to doing that in your production environment. Instances that grow organically tend to have no change management process or a large number of users. So it's really important, and we think it's crucial to introduce a change request process, whether that be using Jira Service Management or Proforma, or we could even use a standard Jira issue collector and put that on a conference page. Whatever suits your needs. There's lots of different ways of doing it. It's great to get this in place and also very well documented, so your users know how to request change. And again, let's keep it centralized, and that way it's also reportable. Big thing for us as well is limiting the number of Jira admins. Essentially, you want to have the minimum number of people with the ability to make production changes as possible, but obviously each instance is different. You've grown in different ways, and you also might need to scale the number of admins to your instance size and complexity. And finally, we've got a couple more points. It's really crucial to plan your cleanups within your have an actual roadmap of what you want to do and when. Say you're in a merger, you might have a really busy couple of months coming up with actually bringing users on. Maybe it doesn't make sense to have a cleanup straight away. It's good to plan this and make sure it fits in at the appropriate time. And finally, do you have an end goal, an end state, a vision for what you want Jira to be and how you want it to be used? If you don't start to think about this, how do you want users to use it and what do you want to get out of it at the end of the day? So next up, we'll move on to the identification stage.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, you skipped that one. So identification. So with identification, the sort of starting point for that is we have this sort of ready-made template for you to use. So it will help you find target areas to work on, and sort of just lets you organize your thoughts in a good, coherent manner. And that will help you sort of see where the problem is. Is it bad infrastructure? Is it an organizational issue? Because just writing it down will actually help you a lot with this. And this form that we provide, I'll put the link in the chat right now for 2 of them. We have a cloud version and an on-prem version. And this actually pairs up great with the free consultation that Nick mentioned previously, because we can help you analyze the results of filling out this template and sort of help you see what you need to work on the most. And if we go to the next slide, sorry, there's a bit of a delay on my end with this. Yeah, awesome. So also with identification is you got to review your system, not at just a detail level, but also at a bit of a higher level. And what's good to have then is a great tool that will actually give you that information when you need it, instead of having to find it yourself by looking at every single small piece of the system. There's a tool called Optimizer that we make that is great for things like that, as it has its own built-in health check system that will show you key areas that we found where you could do some improvements. And don't just look at the configuration items, look at the underlying cause. If you have a lot of custom fields, there's probably an organizational issue underlying that you need to work on. Maybe you need to get that change request process in. Maybe some of the admins aren't collaborating well with other admins and they're duplicating effort, or not looking at objects that already exist to see if they fit the bill or the requirements from the end users. And so if we go to the next slide, And then using whatever tools you have available to you, you want to actually look at the configuration items that are on your system. And you need to find, what can I improve on? What can I find to work on? And of course, what you're looking for then depends on what level of activity you're looking at. Are you looking for removing unused objects? Are you doing some optimizations? Are you doing a merger of configuration? All of those require different types of identification, but having a great tool always gets you there a lot easier than having to do it manually. And always try and get the quick wins in as soon as you spot something. If you see something that can be done quickly, try and log that somewhere to make sure that that is recorded and documented, because in all of this, documentation is key, and being organized really helps you get to the finish line a lot easier and a lot quicker with less time wasted. So if we go to the next slide, after that we have Nick.
Thank you, Jeff. So yeah, next up is stakeholder engagement. So for any movement, it's key to have stakeholders buy in, but why should they at the end of the day? So we've got some four key reasons here, which obviously if you have good cleanups, this will help maximize your return on investment, as we've mentioned previously. And this will be done by improving your productivity of having better organized, cleaner Jira systems. You have better reporting, a better output, deliver better insights, and you also probably have a better performance. Your Jira server will be up and running quicker. It'll be less negative effects due to less data that's currently on the server. We also like to think here that communication is key. We've seen from time to time with numerous different clients where there's a large organization with thousands or tens of thousands of users or employees, that if there's no clear communication between the stakeholders and the end users of the tools, that it's really hard to get a buy-in from the stakeholders as well as users. So in this way, we like to say it's good to provide an actual roadmap for your changes, how they happen, how often they happen, how regular, and why they happen at the end of the day. What are you trying to get out of this? But one thing to be wary of is that as and when you do reach out to your stakeholders, you're going to get a lack of response at the end of the day. Unfortunately, this is just something that happens. So we like to suggest that you create some working groups or forums to kind of bring together people who are very interested and keen to make Jira the best it can be for your organization. And these guys can be essentially your internal champions. And as and when you do roll out changes or roll out communications, they can ensure their teams beneath them also get that information. As previously mentioned, I said AC do an Atlassian health check, which is the same as a cleanup but a one-off occasion. And at the stakeholder engagement stage, what we do is like to present stakeholders with an executive report, and this contains our findings and suggestions. This will vary from some quick wins to larger changes, which could be the standardization of projects, so workflows, screens, custom fields, etc. And then once you've got your stakeholders together and they've agreed on various changes, you can begin the cleanup stage. And I'll hand over back to Jeff.
Thanks, Nick. So in stage 4, which is cleanup, we're going to cover the sort of steps that we suggested, the sort of schedule with the three main action types. So we're going to start off with the monthly cleanup. So this is a quick win one. You're focusing on the small things, and you're sort of working preventatively. So you want to find these issues before they start sort of snowballing, before they get out of hand, and sort of stop a domino effect of happening of out of control configurations. And this will also let you see, are any of the admins doing actions without actually documenting it? Are they doing it without consulting other administrations, or sort of filling in the reports they need to do to follow your change process? Because what you will otherwise have is an out of control system where things are occurring, but no one is aware of them. And that's something you want to catch as early as possible to really stop the system going out of control. And one really important step here is to actually gather feedback from your stakeholders. You want to see what's working for them, what isn't working for them, have any recent changes been good or bad, and you want to document this. And for every month, you want to write down a report that you have in a shared space, such as Confluence, that you can then reference in future cleanup tasks. And then every single monthly cleanup task is a step towards a quarterly cleanup task. So we're preparing for the next one. And this written report is part of that preparation. So now if we go to the quarterly one. Just wait for the slide to change. I think it's just delay on my end. Yeah, now it changed. Thank you. So with the quarterly one, we're focusing on some smaller improvements. So we're not just cleaning up small pieces here and there, but we're actually making changes to the configuration at this point. So we're removing duplicates. We're doing some minor analysis, but we're not doing something major. We're not merging projects at this point. It's quite a big task. And if you do them too often, the problem is you'll have more downtime. You'll have more issues where you'll have a problem occur, but no one's going to find it. So if you sort of push that towards the annual one, we can sort of optimize the way that we do our issue finding, our testing, and the whole bug reporting and the feedback gathering. Here, we also want to identify things to delete in our annual report, such as projects which we want to archive or just remove outright because the data on them might be useless at this point or just too old to be worth keeping. We also want to remove our inactive users. But if you have to remove inactive users often, you might want to look at your offboarding procedures because they might be out of date at this point. Because if you have inactive users who are still in the system, the question is then, how did they get there and why weren't they removed at the point where that person left the company or changed to another department? You also want to archive issues at this point to just make sure it's a bit smoother. You don't have all this old data lying about when no one's using it anymore. And you want to really retain data because it might become useful down the line. At this point in time, when it's only been a quarter since the last one, you're not sure yet if that's really something you want to do. And don't forget to review any security notices. It's very easy to miss an email saying there's been a security patch that was very important for the application that you're using. This may be Jira, this may be Confluence, but you really need to go through the backlog of security notices and make sure you're compliant and you're protected so that your data stays safe and your system stays safe. So if we go into the annual cleanup, so the annual cleanup is sort of a bigger task. You're probably going to want to put aside a bigger block of time for this one because it can be quite complicated and quite involved depending on your system and the amount of configuration you have. So here we want to go through the archive and deletion mark projects that we did in the quarterly cleanups. So now we should have a ready-made list that we can just go through. And at this point in time, all the stakeholders for those projects, such as project admins or users of those issues, should have enough time to have told you yes or no, or whether or not that can be archived or deleted, since they've had at least 1 quarter for it and as much as a whole year to report back to you. You also want to standardize your field configurations and enforce the standards that you have designed during this last year. So most likely during this year, you'll have found new standards you want to implement, how you want to change your procedures. And this is the point in time where you do that. So you have this yearly audit of your standards and how you do things. And you have a good point in time where you do this every year to make sure that you do keep reviewing it because you have to stay consistent. Because if every single standard update is an ad hoc task, then over time, there's a risk of you forgetting to update your standards. And then things just sort of fall out of sync and become sort of a legacy. And we recommend that, of course, before you do any operations, that you would have a backup or you would make sure that any data deletions have been put somewhere else so they can be restored. But this is especially important with these sort of annual cleanups where we're doing more critical changes and we're possibly doing breaking changes. Another really big thing to do here is third-party apps. So you might have third-party apps that are either out of date, so you need to update them to stay safe, or you might have unused apps. So with the unused apps, they could have a massive performance impact, depending on, of course, what type of app it is, but you want to reduce the amount of them to make sure your system is more performant and you have less possible security issues on your system. Because the more we add to a system, of course, the bigger it grows. And then the more code, of course, we have, every single line of code is a potential security risk waiting to happen. So just do your best to stay up to date. So a really important thing with this is to have good documentation. You might think, oh, this app isn't used anywhere, but there might be a lot of usages for the app throughout your system that you're not aware of because they haven't been documented. This could be hidden in a post function. This could be hidden in some automation tool that's part of the app. This could be hidden in a scheduled task. To make sure you actually analyze the app usages in depth and find all the usages. And if you don't have the documentation, take this as an opportunity to actually make that documentation. Write down what's used where, so you have a good tracking of dependencies on all of your third-party apps. And this is also at the point in time where you go through all the feedback you've gathered from the quarterly sort of cleanups and all the feedback you've had throughout the year, and implement that. And if you can implement it, or it's outside of the time budget, maybe you want to get back to those users and say, we're going to push this to next year or next quarter, but just make sure you have a good outcome document where you're writing everything down, what was actioned, what wasn't actioned, and what are the upcoming actions coming from this action. So you have this nice audit log from year to year, quarter to quarter, month to month, where everything has a good trail, who asked for it, and why was it selected to be done or not to be done. And I think then we're on to the next segment, which is optimization. And optimization is in theory very simple, because it's just about like streamlining, trimming the fat, minimizing your system in the ways that it's expanded, which aren't necessary. So it's not really that simple in practice, however, because it's all about standards and documentation at the end of the day when it comes to optimization. Because if you don't know what you're working towards, you can't optimize, because you don't have a very strict and specific goal in mind. So you'll always be halfway optimizing because you don't know what you actually need. So you got to document and capture the actual requirements of your systems and the procedures that you have in place. How does your business work? What do people need to do? And what's the procedures they go through to get their job done? And then you need to make sure that you have those standards in place, because most likely you'll have a lot of different approaches to the exact same procedure put in the configuration through your system. You'll have maybe 10, 15 projects configurations that all do the exact same thing in slightly different ways. And probably you can optimize these into one single standardized project that everyone can use and will cover 90% of your use cases. So what we recommend is have good documentation for both the users and the admins. So when the users have a question, they know where to go to find information. And if they have a request for a change, they know where to raise the ticket or who to contact to get this sort of request initialized. So that can go through the change request procedures that you put in place. And then if possible, you should also have a place where other users can see what changes have been requested. And then maybe they can load on it. But you got to have that sort of user engagement so people can see what's going on and they know sort of who to turn to. But this also goes for the admins. The admins need documentation. The admins need to know what are other admins doing, what are we working on, what are our projects, and what has been requested from us. Because otherwise you'll have duplication of effort, you'll have information get lost, you'll have a request sitting in someone's inbox, and that will never get put into a place where other admins can see it. And this will affect your whole business procedure. So really, when we talk about optimization, we talk about put standards in place, put documentation in place, and then implement that and try and fit as close as you can to these standards, but still remain flexible. Because if you're not flexible, you won't be able to actually fulfill the business needs of a lot of your teams, because often there will be teams that have that specific thing they do a bit differently from everyone else, and you just can't fit into the standard procedure. And you need to have space for that. But you also then need to document, why was that exception accepted? Why did we say yes to this? So the other admin knows, oh, this isn't a misconfiguration, this is on purpose, and here's the reason why. Documentation is extremely important when it comes to this. And if you have someone ask for a customization, say, oh, I have this very specific need, ask them, can you just try out this standard project for a week or two? And most likely after that 2 weeks, they're going to go, oh yeah, it was actually fine, I didn't need that. So just make sure you think about all that and you still stay flexible, even though you have these well thought out standards. And back over to Craig.
Thank you. So now that we've covered how often you should conduct a cleanup and the 5 different stages, we're making great time. So we can now open this up and we'd like to get some comments from yourself. So what we thought we'd first start with is some of the areas that you may find challenging. So on the next slide here, we've got 9 different areas that typically can be areas that people would focus in on. A lot of these are featured in the presentation so far. And on the attendee hub outside of Zoom, there's a poll currently open with these 9 areas included. So if we take a minute or take 30 seconds, if everyone could, if possible, just go through and highlight the area that you find the biggest challenge. And then depending on the votes and the number of answers, we'll navigate to those different sections because we've got some top tips for each one of these. And we'd like to base it very much on what you'd like to hear about. So yeah, I'll pause for a moment and then let you all answer the poll on the attendee hub. And then we'll navigate to the relevant slides. Chat over here.
Before we do that, Craig, shall we take a look at a few of the questions we've got in the chat? Because we've actually got 4 or 5
go
there.
for it. Go for it.
So yeah, I'll make my way from top to bottom, and Jeff and I and Craig will kind of give us some input. So firstly, let's look at Dave's question. So it's a big challenge. He has 500 plus custom fields in Jira Cloud. How can you get that down to a manageable number? So obviously, a custom field is a big one. It really impacts your performance of Jira itself. What we like to do or suggest is really having some kind of generic custom fields that you can kind of reuse across multiple different projects and have that very well documented. As Jeff previously said, if you don't document it and users want a certain field, they're going to ask for that. And if they get it, can it be reused? And if not, it's probably not what you should have. But at the end of the day, there will be odd occasions where you do need custom fields that are unique. Within the cloud, with Optimize, I don't think we have the feature available quite yet that merges custom fields, but I'm sure Jeff can expand on this, whether it be available anytime in the near future. But you have different options of how you actually can go around reducing these custom fields, whether you take the cloud instance down to server, use Optimize for Jira, where there's lots more features on the server or DC version, merge fields where applicable, and take it back up to cloud. And then you want to input there, Jeff?
Yeah, I would say the most important thing about getting your custom fields down is understanding why they're there. Because if you got to 500 now, you're probably going to get back up to that number if you don't fix your sort of behavioral tendencies that made those occur. But also look at what type of fields do you have the most of. Can you, as he said, remove duplicates? But then also look at, are there slight differences between them that make them necessary? Because you might think that, there might not be a difference between 2 fields, but sometimes for legal reasons or for other reasons, some specific teams do need that. So I think look at who's using what, reach out to people, give them a bit of time, a bit of warning to then tell you yes or no, and then I think start actioning things and build a plan for this. Sort of see what are the easy wins, what are the more complex wins. Maybe some fields are a real pain to merge together to remove the duplicate data and to get them on the same configuration. But some of them might be very quick wins. I would say start focusing on that and chip away at it, but then also put in a change request procedure as soon as you can, really, to make sure that this number doesn't keep growing while you're chipping away at it. Because I think you got to hit it at the root of the cause first.
Just to quickly add as well, a lot of time I've seen from personal experience, companies have a lot of text fields, whether that be single or multi-line. And that's something that kind of frustrates me. You've got Confluence, which is the ideal place to kind of keep your documentation. A lot of people like to have the documentation on tickets. So where possible, move that stuff to Confluence, or you can look at templating text fields. So, for example, you can have acceptance criteria as a generic one, but use different contexts, kind of template that to have, say, different table, have a table within the actual field itself and look for different inputs depending on the relevant context. But yeah, that's it for me. So next question. So for filters, how can you essentially see which are being used and which to kind of delete? So again, with Optimizer, you can look at your filters. You can actually see how active they are, essentially by seeing how recently or how many times they've been viewed and when they were last viewed. I think Jeff will expand on that a bit more.
Yeah. So that's you're talking about the boards feature we have in Optimizer. So we have a feature where you can see how the boards are used, and we sort of track the latest view on them. When it comes to filters, however, there's a bit of an issue there. filters are a thing that very easily runs completely rampant on many systems. And we do have partial filter support in Optimizer, but the biggest problem there is if you have a system that has possibly hundreds of thousands of filters, because we have seen that, cleaning that up is something extremely complicated. And at that point, I would say if it's out of scope for you to do internally, it's probably worth asking someone like Nick to come in and help, because there is no safe programmatic way to find every single filter usage, because many plugins use filters and there is no automated way to be compatible with every single add-on there is out there on the market to ensure you're not going to break something by removing a filter. So that's sort of the sad truth of it, where there is no guaranteed way of having a good filter on the filter, so to say.
So
Thank you.
Next up, we've got, I think, Piyush, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, so feel free to put another message in saying if it will break anything when migrating an object. I'm guessing referring to using Optimizer. But again, with Optimizer, there's only certain things you can delete, and it sets, say, for example, workflows. You can't delete active workflows that are being used. You can only delete an active workflow. So there are some checks in it to stop you kind of breaking Jira as such. So I think, yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Does Optimize provide an undo function? Not an undo function as such, but you do get warned as and when you go to delete or do any major actions, to make sure you are ready to do that change. Jeff, do you know if there's any idea of bringing in an undo feature anytime?
The problem with undo features is just they're not really viable. The problem with anything like Jira is you have a lot of data dependencies and data moves as you do make changes. If you do an undo in almost every instance, you would have a problem of data having been modified post a removal. So we haven't put in that feature just because actually then fixing any collisions would basically be months of work for any major operation just because of the amount of data involved on a big system. So we haven't put in that function. If we show all the dependencies before executing a cleanup action, we do not show them before doing a cleanup action because we do not allow you to remove anything that has dependencies on it. We do, however, show you a drop-down searchable table of every dependency for every object inside of the tables itself. So you can sort of drill down and see multiple levels of dependencies. And then we have a question from Tiffany. I have issues with cleaning up too many screens and custom workflows for departments that want something required and others don't. Okay, so you have a lot of screens and custom workflows for departments, and some of them need customization and some of them don't need customization. What I would recommend for that is find the ones that need customization and put them on a list, and then look at all the other ones. Try and categorize them into similar batches of workflows and screens. See if you can make a few core ones that are shared among all of these other ones, and then see if the customized ones that said they need customization fit into any of these, and then try and push them over. Or see, can you make slight modifications to these standardized ones, as add maybe a field that can stay unused on a few other ones, just to fit in a few of these other ones that ask for customizations. Because most of the ones asking for customizations will still either be a new standard, because most of them can ask for the same thing, or you can modify another standard just to have an unused field on 50% of them, another one actually use the field, something like that. Just be a bit flexible, but don't give yourself and your other admins too much work.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think any other thing to add, maybe look at naming conventions, try, show the different kind of categories, and for those that kind of fit, say, some standardization, they have a standardized naming convention, and if they're unique, you have something to kind of indicate that as well. That's it.
Yeah. Hi guys.
Just to add on that, Nick, in the poll, so thank you for everyone for filling out the poll. Custom fields came out number one, which we covered first off, so that was a nice coincidence. But secondly was standardization, and you just mentioned that then. So I guess if there's any other kind of top tips that you'd have with regards to standardization, I'll move to the slide now on the screen. Then yeah, if you're able to help with that.
Thank you, Craig. Also, do you want to go, Jeff?
Yeah, I was going to say with standards, the most important thing is to actually know what you're making a standard for. You have to know your business procedure. You have to reach out to the people actually using the system and gather their information from them, because otherwise you're not knowing what you're making a standard for. Because often you'll have a Jira system that's sort of gone a bit wild, it's overgrown a bit. It's sort of like a garden that hasn't been well managed. And you'll have a lot of workflows implemented that aren't actually exactly what they want. It's going to be slightly off. So just trying to extrapolate their needs from what's actually there isn't going to work for you. So you have to reach out to the different teams and actually get information from them. And you might have to actually involve some higher up stakeholders to get them to put pressure on these teams to actually get back to you. Because those teams are complaining to you, and then you're trying to help them, but they're not cooperating with you. So you have to get a bit of help sometimes to actually get that information back out, and then take these procedures and then try and put them into workflows, send them back to people, get the green light. And this is going to take a while. It's just there's no quick way around that. Communication takes time, and it's going to be a bit of back and forth. And once you have these then procedures in place, you have prototyped up workflows, and probably not in Jira itself, but as diagrams or something like that. Now you can start implementing them. We would recommend you make a few template projects that use these standardized systems. And then if you want to try and convince someone, hey, this will probably work for you, you can give them a quick round tour of here's what this template looks like, here's how it works, and they can just give you the thumbs up, and then you can give them a project by that template, and then now you're good to go. And just make sure everything's documented, really. I would say that's really important. You might make the best standard in the world and try and keep it as best you can, but if no one else understands it and no one knows how it's supposed to work, you'll probably have misuse from both the user's side and the other admins. Nick, if you have anything to add?
I think you got all the points there. I know it's a lot of hassle, and it's a lot of effort to go from unstandardized to standardized, but I can assure you guys it's worth the pain of getting there. I think just quickly, I think Piyush, I think you've come, John. Do you want to say your question? I think that's what you were hoping to do.
Thanks. So what I was trying to ask is, see, anyhow, you have done most of the part that we are doing, like in a not daily basis, quarterly basis, or yearly basis, right? So is that still there's something that we can integrate more from our side? Let's say some kind of customization or some kind of programming skills that the admin can make a use of with respect to your application, and that will help to enhance the more productivity or the more standardization across the whole instance.
So again, I think what you're asking essentially, do we have any functionality, say an optimizer or any of our other plugins that kind of helps you coordinate your cleanups? And the answer to that currently is no. I think the best way of doing it is just kind of organize it in your calendar, whether you use Office 365, whichever tool it is, just to kind of have on certain weeks, or say 2 days every month, 1 week every quarter, 1 week every year, when you're having which cleanup and when. But apart from that, there's no plugin as such that we have that can help you plan it. Essentially, I don't know if Jeff, you got anything else to add to that?
I would say tools like Optimizer will help you coordinate because it will help you gather information, but there's no one way for everyone to coordinate because it depends on your business structure and sort of how you work as a team and sort of the size of the team. So I would say you really got to sort of look at the tools that you have at hand and figure out how can we best use this information and organize this information on something like Confluence to make sure that everyone knows what's going on and what our plans are. And I think we're getting close to the time, so I think it's back to Craig.
Yeah, I was about to jump in and say, these are all great questions, and we'd definitely welcome any of you to ask the questions to us afterwards. We have to stop in a minute's time just to make sure you have time for coffee, networking, etc., and get to the next session. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Please do come and speak to us and bring your questions. We'll be more than happy to help. Just to say quickly before I dive into the close, everyone that filled out the polls, I appreciate there were other sections and other aspects that you may find challenging. Don't worry, these slides will be made available. plus the presentation as well. So those top tips, etc., for each of those sections should be made available to you. If they aren't, then please reach out to us directly and we can definitely send you a PDF of those so that you have them. Just to close, it's been an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you ever so much, Jeff, Nick. Thank you for sharing a lot of your knowledge. Just on 2 closing slides, there are a number of resources out there that are available. We'd highly recommend you, obviously, the community every day. There's plenty of different discussions going on within there. You have well-known people within the ecosystem, Rodney Neese and Rachel Wright, to name but a few. Again, definitely, if you haven't heard of these 2 individuals, definitely have a look at their sites registered on, listed on the screen. And feel free to try out Optimize for Jira with the Atlassian Marketplace. You do get a free trial period. Definitely recommend taking advantage of that and reaching out to us if you have any questions. And a reminder, please visit our booth. There'll be a 6-month free license for 1 lucky booth attendee. So you have to be in it to win it. So please visit our booth and you'll be in the draw for a 6-month free license of Optimize for Jira. With that being said, it's been a pleasure to be here. Sorry for the abrupt close, but I wish you have a fantastic JiraCon. Thank you for joining us today, and hopefully see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Cheers all. Bye-bye.